All right, I believe we are on. It is 6 o'clock. I'd like to call us to order. In accordance with South Carolina Code of Laws 1985, Section 30-4-80-E, the following have been notified of the time, place, and agenda of this meeting: the Herald, the Charlotte Observer, CN2, and WRHI. If I could please ask everyone to join me, please, in a moment of silence. Thank you. We'll now stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You have all received a copy of the agenda. Were there any adjustments or corrections?
No, ma'am.
That will stand with unanimous consent. This meeting is a little different than others. We do this once a year. This is the official public hearing for our 24-25 general fund budget. So, Ms. Lordo, I would invite you up to present to the audience the general fund budget for next year.
Tonight, I can certainly say that the administration is pleased to present the proposed general fund budget for the upcoming fiscal year 2024-2025 for the public as well as for your consideration, school board members. As you know, the state budget process is still ongoing, as we have seen in prior years. It is now in conference committee that has been formed by the House and Senate conferees. Last word we have heard is they're still hoping to have a final budget passed by June 30th. I do not believe they plan on going into July. I know they are actually have the state budget on the conference committee agenda tomorrow starting at 2 p.m. They will be meeting and discussing the appropriations bill. As always, our local process began in January, and as I've said many times, I like to just point out once again for the benefit of the public that the new state funding model, and we'll talk about that a good bit, it's not favorable for Fort Mill, really due to the methodology in the proportionate share distribution concept, the increase in poverty weighting, with Fort Mill being the lowest poverty district in the state, and then the inclusion of the state charter schools. And we've mentioned that several times, how that impacts the funding formula. But we are presenting our budget tonight based on the Senate version, which are the last allocations we have received, and those are based on the 135-day student counts. We are still hopeful. The main difference between the House and Senate versions of the budget had to do with either putting $230 million into the state education funding formula, which is what the House did originally. The Senate dropped it back to $200 million. So we are hoping that additional $30 million will be put back in the final state budget. I'm going to begin by just recapping some of the key goals that we as a district and administration have when we develop the budget. We are always going to come to you with a recommended balanced budget plan, meaning our plan is that we have enough revenues to cover all the recommended expenditures for next year. We want to continue to recruit and retain staff in all areas of our district, and so we have to look at market on some of our salary schedules to allow us to remain competitive. We want to maintain reasonable class sizes. We've always been a district that has prided ourselves, even with our growth, on keeping our class sizes reasonable, and we've seen the payoff of that with our academic scores year after year. We want to provide staffing to make sure we stay in compliance with all the state, and we could say state and federal ratios and regulations. Many times we've seen the state come in or the federal government come in and put mandates on us that they don't fund. and that automatically forces us to have to pick up those expenditures locally. But we want to maintain our budget in compliance with these ratios and regulations. And then the last key budget goal is we are on the last year of ESSER funding expiring. It's ESSER 3, and we have some positions that we want to keep in our district serving our students, and we need to move those to our general fund because those funds will expire in September of 2024. Some of the key areas that we looked at in this budget plan, and we're proud to say that all of our teachers would receive a salary increase, and our starting teacher pay would now be at $50,000. It's currently at $47,000, so this would be an increase to $50,000 for next year. All other staff would receive a 5% cost of living increase on all of our other pay scales. And all employees would receive, all eligible employees, meaning they have been here for a full year with the district, would receive a step increase for an additional year experience on their salary schedules. We have new classroom teachers for growth in this budget. We have additional special education teachers due to our population increase in the special education area. And we have 15 additional special ed assistants. I think board members, I've shared with you that the original request was higher than that. And working with the special ed leadership team, they said 15 was their bottom line number that they really needed for the caseloads next year. We also have an exciting new program at the elementary level for new special ed instructional coaches that would support our elementary special ed teachers. We have additional bus aid positions for transportation. That's not something we add every year, but we're continuing to see the need for more and more routes because of the residential growth in our district. And so that was transportation's #1 request, was additional bus aids. And then curriculum, software supplies, and other program funds, they have been in a shift mode from wherever I could find to fund some of their items. So these are not new things to the budget, but we have been trying to get them built into the recurring general fund budget for a couple years. And so we're happy to be able to do that in this budget plan. We have talked a lot about the education funding reform. We will be next year going into the 3rd year under the new formula. Just as a reminder to everyone, it replaced EFA, or the Education Finance Act, and it now funds classrooms based on the statewide average student-teacher ratio versus a base student cost model. Each district receives their share of, I say, the big pot, and it still has some pieces in the formula that are not favorable for us, such as the index of tax-paying ability and the poverty weighting. The poverty weighting increased from 0.20 per student to 0.5, meaning districts that have a higher poverty level than our district are going to receive more state funding under this formula. Some of the things that the state legislators, when they first enacted this, came out and said is they feel like districts will have more flexibility. Instead of a lot of various different line items in the state budget with specific restrictions, they wanted to move more to a model of giving districts just an allocation and letting districts locally decide how best to use those funds to serve their student population. The other thing that they added when this was passed was increased accountability to the communities, to the taxpayers. We were already doing so many of these things, like publishing our budget on our website annually. We have to be audited by an audit firm that's approved by the state, and our audit firm is probably the #1 audit firm that's approved by the state because they do so much school district work in South Carolina. And then, as you know, last year, the Revenue and Fiscal Affairs Office created this public dashboard with district data that anyone can go and look and pull different pieces of data and compare districts. This is a recap of our budget history over the last 5 years. I don't think it would be a surprise to anyone to see this chart and see that as our student average daily membership has increased over the last 5 years, our budget needs have had to increase over the last 5 years. The proposed budget for 2024-2025 is $234,226,316. This is based on a projected student enrollment of 18,535 students, and the amount that we would spend per pupil based on this budget plan is $12,637. But you can see that proportionately the budget has gone up as our student average daily membership has gone up. And I include and base the budget on average daily membership because that is the funding mechanism, not enrollment. And just as a recap, any students who enroll after the 135th day, we do not get funded until the next school year.
Ms. Lordo.
Yes.
You covered the point of explain what the average daily membership calculation actually is.
Sure. So average each day, each of the schools, the power school person at each school records attendance. And so we know every day what the seat count is in every school versus the enrollment. And so the average daily membership is just on each day. Specifically, there's certain key dates like the 45th day, the 10th day of school, the 45th day, the 90th day. We know what the average number of students that attended during that time period. So, of course, we want 100% enrollment. We want every student in a seat every day, but we know that's not going to happen. And so the average daily membership is just on average how many students attend versus the total enrollment. Does that make sense?
Makes sense to me. I
Okay.
want everybody else to.
No, perfect. Thank you. So moving on to the assessed value history, this is actually the dollar amount that is on record with the York County Tax Assessor and Auditor's Office as to properties under Fort Mill TAK School District. And once again, I don't think anyone would be surprised looking at this to see the continued growth that we are experiencing. And our 2023 tax year assessed value was $676,764,000. It was an increase over last year of $54 million. It was primarily residential, was $25 million of that growth. $16 million was real property, meaning 6% valued property, not homes. And $6 million was motor vehicles, as we've seen in our monthly vehicle tax collections. And then the remaining $7 million covers a lot of other things like boats, covers manufacturing personal property, furniture, fixtures, equipment inside businesses, fee in lieu agreements, and those type of things. And interesting, over this 10-year period, when I ran the calculation, it is, you can see, more than doubled. It's increased 114% over a 10-year period, our assessed value here. Looking at the detail of our projected revenue plan for next year, I mentioned that our total budget proposed is $234,226,000. That is an increase of $16.4 million rounded. You can see that our primary general fund revenue sources are local property tax and then the state education funding formula. Sometimes it's called aid to classrooms. But those two amounts equal 56% of our revenue plan and 39.5% of our state plan. We've also talked a lot about how over the past couple years we have seen that shift where there is more dependency on local tax funding because the state funding as a percentage continues to decline. each year, but it is still, those are our two primary funding sources. The state funding increase that you see here, it is, I just wanted to point out, this is actually net of a decrease over our budget plan for this year. Board members, you remember I've shared that we actually brought in less state funding this year than what we originally budgeted because they lowered our allocation throughout this year. So even though we're seeing an increase in state funding, it really should have been more, but it is net of what we lost in the budget plan last year. The transfer from contingency, we are trying to reduce our dependency on that one-time funding. So this plan would only need to bring in $2 million, where this current year we are using $3,350,000. And I do want to point out that the local tax projection here of $131 million, that includes a 2% growth rate on our tax stream based on that increase in assessed value that you saw in the previous chart, and it includes the millage increase of 21.9 mils. The interest income, you can see that we have increased slightly in our budget plan. We are continuing to see those higher market rates with the local government investment pool, and we're very happy about that. So we feel confident in increasing that budget line item a little bit for next year as well. So the overall budget increase is 7.5% over this year's budget, or $16.4 million. On the estimated expenditure summary, the key points that I would like to mention here, as you can see, salary and benefits make up 89.4% of our budget plan. That is consistent with how we have tracked over prior years. And of the $16.4 million increase for next year, $14.9 million of that is attributable to salaries and benefit needs for next year. That only leaves another $1.5 million for other items. So almost $15 million would be going toward positions for next year. And once again, this is 89.4% of our budget. These are actual people who are providing services directly to our students, or people who are providing support to our schools every day. I just think that's very important to make sure that everyone understands that. So out of the $234 million planned budget, $209 million would go toward position costs. And then you can see the next largest item is the operations and maintenance of our facilities, $13,602,000. That makes up an additional 5.8% of our budget. So those first two categories are 95% of our budget, is people and operation of our facilities. And then small amounts on our department allocations, our school budgets, that's our per pupil allocations, our technology in the general fund, safety is our school resource officers, our activity funds, and our activity bus operations as well. Now I'm going to go into a little bit of detail about what our proposed increases are. This slide is our Category 1 priority. These are our highest priority items for next year. These are things that are either a lot of them already committed, or as I like to say, it's cash out the door. It's things that we have to account for, such as utilities and property insurance and those type of items, that we need to make sure we have the funds set aside. But you can see from the first two categories, and as it's related to the previous slide, $10 million of the proposed increase would go toward the staff salary and fringe benefit cost. It would go toward increasing the teacher pay and increasing the other staff pay scales. The other items, we have touched on the new classroom teachers, new teachers in the special ed area, new assistants, school psychologists, and the new special services and instructional coaches. I mentioned the shift in the ESSER 3. We will be in the middle of next year starting to really up our plans for opening the new elementary school the next year. So we will need to bring in a principal and a bookkeeper mid-year to help with plans for opening that school. And then the other items are more the recurring cost in the area of technology, the instructional and network engineering licensing contracts, the utilities cleaning, supplies for our maintenance budget, and then I mentioned the bus aid positions and the activity buses. So category 1 priority items for this plan are $14.5 million. To fund category 1 will take 16.8 mils. So that will take 16.8 of the maximum 21.9 that you could approve to meet category 1. Category 2 and 3 priorities are listed next. These are a couple of the key things here that I want to mention. We are looking at making a market adjustment on our special ed assistance pay scale. We see a lot of turnover in that area. It's a very demanding job in the district. Many of those assistants are working one-on-one with special needs students, and we feel like we need to do a slight market adjustment on that pay scale. This category 2 has 3 additional ESOL teachers. I think I shared with you that 5 were requested. The other 2 were on category 4, which we cannot, doesn't appear right now we can get to that funding level. So this would add 3 additional ESOL teachers, and then the curriculum funding that I had discussed that was previously state funded. Category 3, we need to move a lead counselor, guidance counselor at each high school to a 240 year-round contract. The last couple years, we continue to have concerns in trying to make sure we have coverage all summer at our high schools for those students coming in on any given day in the summer that need help with their schedule for the next year. So this would provide funding to have 1 full year-round guidance counselor at each high school. The next item is adding an assistant principal at Oak Grove Academy. We currently only have the coordinator, and when he is not on the premises, someone else from another school or the district office has to be on site. So this was a request to add an assistant principal there. The next item is an additional assistant supervisor for maintenance. We have not added additional position there, but we continue to open schools, add more staff. And then the last 2 items were previously on the year-end transfer last year, not built into the recurring budget related to athletics for the insurance coverage and additional funds to help with the coaching stipends. So to add category 2 and 3, that will take 4.7 mils of the 21.9. So we're now at that running total on the millage. But I like to break it down and so you can see each category and what the additional tax millage is. Now I want to talk a little bit about the millage increases. The millage increases, as you know, you are limited under the Act 388 formula, but it is designed, I like to point out, the Act 388 formula is designed by law to provide the necessary revenue increases that match up to the inflation and growth. And that's what this formula is all about, because it's based on the Consumer Price Index and the population growth for Fort Mill School District. So the Consumer Price Index is statewide, and that number for next year is 4.12%. The population growth is 4.13 for us. So the total increase that you can approve is 8.25% of the current year millage, and the current year millage is 265.5 mils. So that mathematically is the multiplication to get to the 21.9 mils. Also, there is a provision in the state law that you can do a millage look back, meaning districts can go back over the past 3 years, and any millage that was not enacted, you could recapture. But I wanted to show you that we do not have that, we do not have any remaining millage for our past 3 years right now, because last year we went back and picked up 4 mills. So we're currently at 0 on the look back millage provision. What will the impact be to our taxpayers? I know that that is always a question that people ask. And so just a few examples that we ran on a non-occupied 6% property, just using a $200,000 value. The 21.9 mils would be $263 a year, or $21.91 a month. On a commercial property at 10.5% assessed value on $200,000, it would be $460 a year, or $38.33 a month. And then on a vehicle, a car, using a random $40,000 value, it would be $53 a year, or $4.41 a month. This is a recap of the operating tax millage history. Once again, it directly correlates with the increase in the budget. But a couple things to point out. We haven't talked about the countywide millage, and the countywide millage is the 30 mills that is assessed across all 4 York County school districts. The first mill off the top is given to York School District 1 because they're the highest poverty district, and this is by state law. And then the remaining 29 mills are divided among the 4 school districts based on the 135-day average daily membership. So I thought you may be interested in the most current numbers. This year's 135-day average daily membership that went to York County recently, we are now currently at 38.3%. Rock Hill is next, and they're at 33.2%. So we have now grown. I think this is our 3rd year being the highest enrollment district in the county. We now have 2,440 more students is where we are with our growth over the next highest, which is Rock Hill. So we should see our countywide tax collections probably increase just a little bit when they do the final year-end tax reconciliation, because our percentage is slightly higher again this year. And then I like to close with just showing some comparable data. We like to talk a lot about our amount that we spend per student. We feel like our spending is very conservative. And I think this data shows that the state average spend per pupil, and this is the latest insight data, which is the statewide formula that we all use because it is consistent among all the districts, what's included in the calculation. But the statewide average was $12,625 spend per pupil, and we spent $11,602. And you can see we were the lowest of the 4 York County districts. A couple other districts in the state that I looked at that we're always interested in seeing were well above us. Lexington 1, which is probably the closest to us in growth right now, their spend per pupil was $12,694, and it continued to go up. Horry County was over $13,000, Charleston's over $15,000, Richland 1 is over $18,000, and even Fairfield because they get a lot of federal funding. Fairfield was 21,800 on their spend. So I just like to show that to say we are very, very conservative and careful with how we spend taxpayer dollars in our district, and what we see as far as successes that come out of our amount that we spend per student. So this concludes our public budget presentation for our proposed 2024-2025 budget. We now invite any comments from the audience members who would like to speak. This will also be posted on our website for review. But I'd also like to say that we continue to be challenged during this time with this decline in state funding and with the growth that we continue to see. But we are a district, I think that everyone would agree, we're dedicated to maintaining our district at this high level to meet the needs of our students and really what our community expects from us as well. And school board, we value and appreciate your continued support of our budget plans year after year. And then I'll just close by saying we feel like this proposed budget plan meets the goals that I originally went through at the very beginning to set us up for another year of success next school year.
So at this time, I would ask if there's anyone from the audience that would want to speak specifically to the budget. I know we've got a number of cards for public participation. That's in a separate section, but anyone that would like to speak on the budget? All right, well, that concludes the public hearing for the budget, and we'll move on to the rest of our agenda. And like I said, we've got the cards for the public participation in just a minute. But first, our next item is some special recognition. I noticed some young folks in the room that had to sit through a budget hearing, so now you're more informed about the budget of your school district. Coach Serene, you want to come up and do the presentation, I believe?
Thank you. Good evening, I'm Mark Serene. I'm the head coach at Fulton Middle High School men's soccer. Thank you for recognizing us. So school board, special thanks to Principal Beam and our athletic director Hartso for the superior support for our 5A state championship to our student athletes. Most of them couldn't make it as they're starting their summer holidays, their summer vacations. This was an incredible season led by a great group of young men. They overcame adversity, remained focused on their mission. They did this while demonstrating class and great sportsmanship. And for that, the coaches are very, very thankful. Thank you so much.
So these are the unlucky players that are not on first week at the beach, right?
All right, guys, come on in together. Perfect. All right, everybody looking right here. 1, 2, 3. Thank you very much.
Congratulations. We've got approval of 2 different minutes. I'll start with May 7. Were there any adjustments or corrections to that? No, ma'am. Those will stand as approved unanimous consent. And then the May 21st meeting, adjustments, corrections, updates. All right, those will also stand with unanimous consent. Our next topic is the public participation. Now, I have 7 cards and we have a 15-minute window. So the math doesn't work out exactly, but we'll do 2.5 minutes apiece. I know a couple of you are with others, and so I'll call them out in the order that I have the cards. If you want to switch order, that is completely okay. But the first one that can come to the microphone, and if you'll start by stating your name and address, and then your time can begin, is Andrew Puzio.
Good evening. My name is Andrew Puzio, 1807 3rd T Road, Lancaster, South Carolina, 29720. I am a district teacher. This is the 4th school board meeting at which I am asking you to ban all phone use in district schools. Over this past school year, I witnessed students filming TikTok videos and playing music out loud in the hallways and dancing around while classes were in session. These are the wages of your inaction on this issue. Additionally, I twice formally requested that this issue be placed on the board's agenda. Both requests were summarily rejected, indicating how little importance you place on this crucial issue. Fortunately, there is a glimmer of hope beyond the workings of this board. The appropriations bill in the legislature would, among its strictures, make receipt of state funds contingent upon, quote, implementing a policy that prohibits access to personal electronic communication devices by students during the school day. While I certainly hope that language makes it into the final version of the bill, thus superseding your inaction, I ask you this: why outsource your responsibility to the state government? Why not take a stand yourselves and ban mobile devices starting with the new school year in August? By policy, there was an email sent to all district personnel last year. By policy, it noted, teachers have the autonomy to allow phones for instructional purposes, but cell phones must be off and not visible otherwise. That's nothing to brag about. I find what was left unsaid more instructive, namely that students are allowed to use their phones at all other times, in the hallways, in the cafeterias. And as teenagers are wont to do, they push the boundaries and we keep giving in, as we have been since around 2019. Would we do that as parents? I sure wouldn't. If we are concerned about our students' mental health and education, why are we allowing phone use at all? When students are allowed access to their devices during class, even for academic purposes, as sure as night follows day, they use them for non-academic purposes as well. A fellow teacher of mine conducts an experiment every semester where she has her students set aside their phones for a block. This year, her students' phones totaled 800 notifications over 3 blocks, more than 3 distractions per minute. Why would a school district condone something so detestable? When I started in this district in 2016, the rule was that phones were to be off and away during school hours. Well, at least that was the case at my school. What was so bad about that? What problem has been solved by allowing rampant phone use in school buildings?
Thank you, Mr. Puccio.
You're welcome.
Our next card is from Ashley, I think it's Mock. Okay.
Okay, hello. At the last meeting, I
State your
addressed
name and address, please.
Ashley Mock, Woodridge Drive. At the last meeting, I addressed the concerns for having this SILFAB in our town. They're your schools for your district. I told you that this isn't a political issue. This is a safety issue for everyone in our town. It turns out that you've known about this company since last year. You didn't tell anyone at the other schools in the district. When this company came in with their strategic marketing team and told you it was going to be safe and that it would be light industrial and you would benefit from a tax break, you said yes. When people came to you to tell you otherwise, you ignored them. Last month, most of the town found out about this, and they were enraged, as many of us were and should be. And now, when we've gone in front of the Board of Zoning Appeals and all facts were presented about these chemicals, and they unanimously decided that solar panel manufacturing is not light industrial, and we are waiting for SILFAB to appeal, you won't speak out about it until 30 days is up from the letter that was sent from Zoning Appeals. You kept this a secret. How can we trust you? How can we send our kids to school in the district in the fall, knowing that you've known all along and that you didn't bring this to your staff's attention? Also, when brought to staff's attention for the concern after the zoning meeting, we were told that we needed to send our inquiries to you all. I come here today with a request of the school board. The request is to make a public statement stating that you will not support a zoning change or any legislation that would allow toxic emissions and hazardous materials treatment next to 2 of your new schools. And you've made this decision right after the schools were already in play. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Spears, I'd just like a point of clarification. There was a gentleman that came, he spoke at the zoning board hearing. He was at one of our public participations back in early October last year.
Correct.
There was nothing hidden. It was in public participation. There was a DHEC hearing that over 250 people attended, myself, Ms. Pratt, Mr. Bolden, back in October. There's nothing hidden by the publicity that has been received by this board. It was in open session. So I just wanted to make that point of clarification.
Thanks. Kristen Vining.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kristen Vining, Poplar Ridge Drive in the Ridge. It's good to see everyone. It's been quite a while. My husband and I have 16-year-old twins. They are rising seniors at Catawba Ridge High School. We moved here in 2011 when they were just little itty bitties. They were 3 years old. And the reason for that is we moved here because of the schools from Charlotte. It's hard to believe that these little ones are the ones that walked so timidly into Sugar Creek all those years ago, 12 years ago, will soon be proudly walking across that graduation stage next year. A stage in which they will receive a Fort Mill School District high school diploma. Very cool. I have loved our schools for more than a decade now. I am grateful for all that each of you do and you represent. I know the seat that you fill is not an easy one to fill. Thank you for allowing me today to ask a few questions, as I believe they are important questions to ask. Because parents are questioning the safety. Homeowners are questioning property value concerns. As most of you guys know, I have a real estate company here. I personally spent an extraordinary amount of time alongside of some of you as a 2018 bond referendum co-chair member, rallying behind our schools in which to keep trailers out of our district, a campaign that each member of the board supported and seemingly are still supporting today, considering the most recent referendum, keeping trailers out. Now we have a Canadian company in our backyard trying their best to rezone to heavy industrial, a much bigger deal than our children learning in trailers. I'm sure most of us will agree. And yet all but 2 board members showed support at the ZBA meeting on May 19th, and not a single one attended this past week's highly publicized rally. My question is just simply why? It is my understanding that some of you attended the initial community information meeting back in October. Scott, you just mentioned that. In 2023, and that information was shared with the board. Then in November of 2023, a meeting took place with Senator Michael Johnson, at which point he directed concerns to be taken to the county council. For that, we thank you for being part of that. I'm genuinely confused, though, because a statement was made by a board member, and I quote, "I myself do not have enough scientific knowledge to fully understand all aspects, but I have encouraged others to continue to let the county council representatives know how they feel. At this point, I don't have any more information than what was sent to the citizens who went to that meeting in October." I don't believe that the community is, and that was end quote, I don't believe the community is looking at the school board for answers as much as we're just looking for support.
Thank you.
Especially given that we've got new scientific data. Thank you guys so much.
Ms. Vining. The next 4 cards that I have are all related to the Early Childhood Center. So again, unless you guys have an order that you wish to speak in, I will just call them out. Do you have an order that you prefer? Okay. I'll let you guys arm wrestle for who gets to go first.
Good evening, everyone, and Chairperson Spears and the board. Thank you for allowing me to speak. This is in reference to the naming of the Early Childhood Development Center that is upcoming, and I understand that.
Can you give us your name and address real
Oh,
quick?
sorry.
I'm sorry.
My name is Cora Dunlap Lyles, and I live at 819 Daly Circle in Fort Mill. And so I understand that a name of George Fish was proposed, but I believe that the name Paradise is more appropriate and more encompassing of the people that have lived in that neighborhood all these years. If those who don't know, Paradise, the first tracts of land in Paradise was bought by a formerly enslaved person by the name of Handy White. He purchased a tract for Bethlehem Baptist Church from Samuel Elliott White for $50 in 1895. He himself was a member of the Fort Mill militia in 1868. He purchased land in 1895. And he and Solomon Spratt bought land along Tom Hall Street that forms the border of Paradise. And also land from his field dirt from his land was used to pave the streets in Paradise and other places in Fort Mill before they were renamed to Joe Louis and Ralph Bunch. And so the name Paradise encompasses all the people who have lived there, who worked in the mills there, who worked at the Shell plant during the war, and in the mills down in Lancaster and in Rock Hill, and worked for the school district as well. We think that Paradise would encompass all of those people and not just George Fish. I worked on the committee to get the historic marker for George Fish. I went to George Fish myself. I love George Fish, but I think that Paradise would be more suited for the naming of that development center, especially where it's located. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Mr. Sanders, if you'll give us your name and address, your time will start.
Good evening, and thank you for serving on these critical issues that confront your decisions. I am Rufus Rudy Sanders, and I reside at 4303 Bent Green Lane, Monroe, North Carolina. But my heart is and soul is right here in our town. I am a proud product of the Paradise community of Fort Mill. The naming of the future Early Learning Center should reflect the community history. This predominantly African-American community was birthed when its first 19 lots were surveyed and laid out in 1897. And if you add that up, that's over 127 years ago. A community actually built from the ground up, a community of neighbors helping neighbor, forming a village, raising its children. The name Paradise would come about years later with women and children harmonizing sweet singing of gospel songs while going about their daily tasks. The neighboring white community heard these angelic voices saying, "It sounds like paradise." And sometime later, Paradise, the name referring to the community, stuck. I still hear those melodic sounds today. We request the Fort Mill School Board of Trustees to reconsider its naming of the Early Learning Center to reflect the esprit de corps of the community, Paradise. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Spears and members of the board. I'm Constance E. Dunlap, Dr. Dunlap, and I am visiting from Washington, D.C. My local address is 819 Daly Circle. I am here because I want to underscore what my sister has shared and my Uncle Rudy has shared. After the school board meeting on May 21st, we watched that recording, and in particular, we were concerned about the naming of the schools. And we noticed Mr. Gray Young's passion and excitement about choosing a name, and it was clear that the school board wants to honor the historically Black community. We appreciate the desire to consider George Fish. Our concern is that George Fish has a monument, it has a marker, it will continue to be acknowledged. The idea of naming the Early Childhood Center almost 100 years later, after the same Englishman, George Fish. George Fish opened in 1926. 2 years from now will be 100 years. The idea of naming the school after an Englishman 100 years later is actually just not good optics. And we would ask the school board to not deviate from your policy of not naming schools after people, because the kids are going to wonder, well, who is George Fish? And ostensibly, it was to be connected to the George Fish School. We urge the school board to consider Paradise. And as has been said, it will be an opportunity to broaden the narrative. We are more than people who were educated at a segregated school. Many of us left during the Great Migration and have returned affectionately, as Rudy has just described. I have my aunt and uncle, John and Juanita Sanders, who stayed here. There are those who stayed. We would like to see the narrative broaden to acknowledge other people, some who attended Paradise and some who did not. Rebecca Studer, when she was doing her documentary of George Fish, thought that people felt dissatisfied about being part of George Fish, and she discovered that we cherish the school because of the experience there. And I think that as people get to know Paradise, they will find out that there's a lot of affection, and we cherish the community too. And we hope that you will consider that as the name. Thank you.
Thank you. And then we have one more speaker, Dr. Sammy Potts.
Madam Chairman, members of the board, it is my distinct honor to stand before you tonight to talk about something that's dear to my heart. And I trust that by the time we leave tonight, it will become so ingrained in each of your hearts that you will have no way of not naming it Paradise. And why would I say that? Because were it not for Paradise, I don't know where I would be. George Fish School, Paradise, my upbringing, George Fish in Paradise, the caring of a community that made us feel special, George Fish in the Paradise community. Naming this center Paradise, I feel will give longevity to us, longevity to the community. It says something to our young people about looking toward the future and the difference a town or a city can make in one's life. Somebody wise once said, the difference it can make will make all the difference in the world. So I come and asking you tonight, strongly consider naming the Life Center George Fish. For I believe, excuse me, I'm saying George Fish, you see where I belong, don't you? Can't get it out of my system. Naming it Paradise. For you see, I'm certain that once people visiting our community will know the history of Paradise, they'll come to know and respect the difference it's made. I thank you very much for what you would do to make a difference in the life of us in the Paradise community. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I will ask you to fill out a card so we can have it on record, but we'll give you a couple minutes as well.
It's Denise Bach, Hammond Road, Fort Mill. And I wanted to, it's been a while since I've had a kid in school. As a matter of fact, my son went to kindergarten in 1991, and his teacher was Cindy Epps. And so
How did he turn out?
he's a Marine, and he's working at Clemson, and got a child of his own. But I feel like I've spent the last year and a half defending the children of Fort Mill in fighting SILFAB, because I know that Andy Lytle did a presentation here and explained the danger of that. And so we hadn't heard anything from the school board, but, so we fought that battle on our own, and we won it, 5-0 on the appeals board. But what I would like for you all to do is you speak up now. And, we have a new county manager here, and I would like to see you all speak up and say, and ask him to give SILFAB a cease and desist letter. Tell them to, that they need to vacate. We don't need them here doing, things that can be, added to later on, where we have no control through DHEC. But I really encourage you all to please make your voices heard. We as the community need to know that you're standing against something that would poison our children and poison our community. I fought, and I have no children here. My son's grown, and he's a good one. But please speak up, and please, contact Josh Edwards, and I'd encourage you to, please ask him to, give them a cease and desist. Don't keep us worrying about SILFAB. We need them gone. We need a safe place for these kids to go to school, and we need a safe place to live. Thank you all.
Thank you. If you will, when you fill that out, if you'll just bring it up and we'll add it to the others, okay? That concludes our public participation. We've got several staff reports on the agenda, starting with a monthly financial update with Ms. Lordo, who's back on the mic again.
Thank you. So I've talked a lot about next year, but just as we look at wrapping up this year, the monthly financial report that I provided for you was as of April 30th. We're 10 months into the fiscal year, only 2 months remaining. Total revenues to date at that point in time were $195,546,000, and total expenditures $169,158,000. So we were in the positive for cash flow as we would expect, $26.3 million. Looking at our local taxes collections versus budgeted, we have now collected 98.3% of our local property tax budget. In April, we collected a lot of the various state tax reimbursements come in April. The remaining 10% of the local property tax relief, which is Tier 1, the homestead exemption, the merchant's inventory, and additional manufacturer's depreciation reimbursement. Vehicle tax collections were once again large, $1,512,000. The reason that's important is when I went back and looked at vehicle tax collections for last April, because it is usually on a yearly cycle as our vehicle tags come up for renewal. We had only collected 1.1 million, so I already saw 400,000 additional come in this year for vehicle tax collections in April. That's important because now projecting out to June, and we're going to talk about the year-end transfer, but I think we are probably going to come in about 2.4 million in local property tax collections over the budget. And a lot of that is because we are seeing those vehicle tax collections come in. I also saw an additional fee in lieu payment come in April, which is all very positive. I would much rather be standing here sharing this with you than the other way. So I think we'll be about 2.4 million over budget. So a lot of tax activity in April from the state. A lot of that came in, which is always comforting to see that those items came in and they were in line with the budget on the state reimbursements. Any questions on the monthly financials? Okay. Impact fees, a lot to report on impact fees. We've now collected to date $67,237,116. We had a big day in May. I remember I told you I get very excited because I get the email every morning, and if it's just a couple, then it's in the body of the email, but if it's an attachment, that means it's larger. So it was an attachment, and I opened it up, and it was 65 homes on one day. They were all in the Elizabeth neighborhood, across the street from Riverview, but we collected on that day $1,180,270. That was on 65 homes. So total in May, we collected on 86 homes. We did not have any apartments permitted in May. So to date, single-family units, 2,592, and multifamily, 1,679, for a total of 4,271. As we would expect, our comparable data rolling for single-family, we're still about 50% more than the 12 months in the prior year, and on apartments, we're about 60% less because we have seen a slowdown on apartments. But year to date, now, or calendar year, last year, calendar year, our average was 597,000, but because of that one big day in May, our May actual was 1,561,000. So we'll see. As we've often said, it's very much an up and down with daily, weekly, monthly impact fee collections. But we had that one very large day in May.
But because we have now completely collected what was required for the elementary that's already in
Correct.
construction, these dollars will be.
Go
going
towards
the
middle school 7.
next,
Yes.
Which is good. To
Yes.
offset some of
It's
that.
great news. And I just want to give you a quick recap. As we ended the school year with our student nutrition, our cafeterias. I always like to share this, but as far as breakfast meals, last school year, we served 555,419 breakfast meals. And lunch meals, we serve 1,502,037 lunch meals. We're happy to report that our participation increased. It was little over 20% for breakfast and a little over 49% for lunch. So the reason that we're excited about that is that means we are going to start our year next year with the same meal prices. We don't feel like we need to propose a meal price increase. We'll certainly let you know if we look at first semester and we feel like things are too tight, we may come back. But at this point in time, we feel like we can keep the meal prices the same because of that increased participation for next year. And we will also start working and putting out information this summer for our families to remind them about submitting their free and reduced lunch applications if they feel like they may be eligible for that. So we can get those applications in process this summer with our families, and especially our new families coming here.
Well, I'd say kudos to you because my meal prices are not the same
I
every year.
know.
I've not been able to keep the same level.
Well, you all know that our cafeteria staff do a great job, and it's a very large. We're the largest restaurant in the area. We like to say. So, yeah. Any questions? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, we're going to get an update on the Early Childhood Center, the architectural update. We've got our architecture firm, Little Diversified here. Mr. Romanek, I'll let you handle who's going to do what parts of the
I'm just going to
presentation.
introduce them, but I got to tell you, the passion
I
that
wish
those
they
folks
stuck
showed
around to see
about
what
the
it's gonna look
naming
like.
and whatever else has been amazing. That's been, since we named that we were going to go out and build the Early Childhood Center, it's been like that. So we had a great kickoff meeting, visioning meeting today. It was exciting. They'll talk a little bit about it, I'm sure, but I'll let them do it because they're the stars of the show. So we have Mr. Tom Balke and Mr. Shanna Hetherington, correct?
That's correct.
So they'll present. We have a slideshow, and it's going to be awesome.
Do I have an advancer? How do we move slides?
Is there a button?
Okay, gotcha. All right, well, thank you very much for having Shana and I here tonight on behalf of Little and all our consulting team. I know Shana's very excited about this. Her daughter's a graduate of Catawba Ridge High School and is looking at becoming a teacher, so she's hopeful. So this is very.
She needs a job.
We're going to go through, some of this content is what we shared when we presented to the facilities team about a month or two ago. Some thoughts about the project. So Little, first of all, what our mantra is elevating your performance, achieving results beyond architecture. So it's one thing to design a building that has windows and all these things, but we're really interested in the results that you're trying to achieve inside, and that was evident this morning at our kickoff meeting with the team. What we think about in schools, we heard comments of safety tonight. Safety should be something in the background. Shouldn't even be aware of it, but schools should be safe. They should be resilient. They should be healthy, and they should be immersive. And that, again, was another big theme in today's session, was the immersive collaborative learning that is going to occur in this center and is occurring in the district today with the early childhood program. I'm going to skip the security essentials. And then we're also going to focus in any school, in any building that we design today in schools, it's really focusing on energy efficiency because that more efficient we design this building, that can save your district dollars operationally in the long term as well. And then health and wellness, mentioned that as being a cornerstone. Just simple things, hand washing, making that a priority is a spreader of germs. Looking through reducing cross-contamination through planning of the facility. Minimizing touch points within the facility, although for young children, that's going to be a hard thing to do. And looking at our mechanical systems and improving outside air and air exchange. But also, a lot of what we talked about was outside learning today and combining the inside and the outside. That'll help that. So, what types of things make early learning different? The first thing that's evident is scale. We have smaller learners, and I think also part of that is capturing their attention. And the things that we're hearing that are being done in the district today from our session this morning says that really are getting these kids engaged in what's going on and really making a difference. And that gets into the idea of predictability and routines and intuitive. And so they're really working hard to change it up. So the facility that we're going to design is going to truly support getting out of those routines and activities. And then thresholds and transitions. As kids move around between indoor and outdoor and from a classroom to what we call the muscle rooms for physical activity, just their ability to easily navigate these facilities is going to be important, as we said, for kids with 18-inch legs. So that'll be an important element of the design. Let's see, getting through some of these budgets. Yeah, so here's just a few projects that we had. Oh, those were a couple of the projects. Okay. Yeah, so these are some of the projects. Am I going the wrong way?
Yes, you're going the wrong
I'm like, where are you?
Oh. New remote. Okay. All right, start there. So this is one of the things that we've done with our team, one of our consulting partners, SHP Architects. They specialize in designing of early, and not just designing, but also programming and understanding how early childhood learning works and a lot of the different modalities. And this is a project of theirs that they designed. And it's interesting in just focusing on, even though the scale and the size of this early childhood center is how they began to break down the scale of that facility for the young learner. Another project that is in their portfolio is they were found by a school in Egypt, and they were called in to help consult design a facility for them. And then this facility here, the Soin Early Childhood Center, again, focusing on diversity of space types for the small learners. This is a project that Shayna and I are working on, almost complete. We're going to tour it in the next month or two in Greensboro, and it's a great example here in these images of the idea of inside and outside learning, covered areas to be outside in shade and in rain, active areas out in the sunshine, and warm and inviting areas on the interior. And then this is a project as well that we did in Charleston, South Carolina, the Children's Nook, and then a larger facility of similar scale for Charleston School District that's supporting a large number of students as well. I think this is about 120,000 square feet. Part of the process that we work through, we started today, and that is we listen first, and that's what we did today, listening to the team and what's important to them to help define success for their early childhood center. From that, we'll begin to develop in concert the programming and then begin to what we call crafting the solutions for these centers. It's important to understand the mission, vision, and purpose of Fort Mill Schools. Anything that we design, if it's not supporting that, then it hasn't been designed appropriately for your specific district. And then, again, visioning, the listening part. While in a smaller scale, this is the kind of activity we had today, spending a lot of time understanding what the factors would be for success for how students learn in this new early childhood center. And then also marking out, talking about it as a day in the life, which is a bit about how we talked about it today, and what are those activities that occur throughout the day, and the different activities and how they affect during the day is very important to these youngest learners. And then some things we shared before we had any visioning sessions and talking with you, just some thoughts and ideas about the project. Why don't you comment real quick on the site that everybody knows about?
This is the site, obviously, the site analysis that we did showing the location near Paradise neighborhood and adjacencies to YMCA and the Greenway, and really talking about opportunities on how you access the site and serve the community, but potential connections to resources that are already in the community and how can we further support that.
And what we did in advance of our initial conversation with the team was just explore different ways to begin to approach a school, this early childhood center on the site, but also thinking about that first point about scale of a center. You know, we're going to be bringing 750 kids together at this site, but how do we begin to make it of a scale that's appropriate to these youngest learners? And, you know, this is one of the initial concepts was the idea of a singular building that had parent drop-off and pick-up on one side, bus parking on the other that could then split off and go to the YMCA. And this was the idea of, given the slope of the site, do we look at verticality or more than one story, but still having at-grade access on each side, and then having this idea of a outdoor play gathering area in the center of the facility. And then beginning to think about planning in different neighborhoods for that. This was another concept where we began to think about breaking the idea of a more singular building up into the idea of more neighborhoods to break down the scale of the facility, having parking where you could come into a common administrative area and then depart to go to these different neighborhoods with outdoor play areas around them. So we have the indoor and outdoor relationship.
And that concept was supported today in our discussions, a lot of conversations about it's almost the 3 schools within a school. So you're bringing the scale down but sharing a lot of the resources and really looking at opportunities to potentially connect to the greenway and the natural environment and how can that become part of the play with the school.
And these were just some explorations of very quick sketch ideas. And then this was another similar theme where we began to actually pull the school apart a little bit further and create even more distinct neighborhoods or learning communities to begin to break down the scale of that school, and then drilling down that further. And then one last idea about kind of this centeredness of this diagram, and then connecting out into outdoor play areas that then are surrounded by the indoor learning environments, and then the relationship between the two. And this was an exploration about how those variety of those communities and neighborhoods could then manifest themselves on the site with the outdoor play areas, the 3 distinct neighborhoods around a central core of common services, and then just some rough schematic planning. And then seeing here again 3 distinct neighborhoods, green spaces all about them, the pink being muscle memory rooms.
And a lot of the conversations have been about looking for opportunities to share resources so that, you know, for many reasons. One reason is so that teachers aren't creating their own things and spending more time duplicating efforts. Is there an opportunity to share those resources and really kind of plan together and bring those items together?
Yeah, and that's where breaking down into these smaller than communities that Shane is talking about, sharing resources, collaboration amongst teachers becomes something of value. And then I think one of the last things is we talked a little bit about energy and design, and one of the things that we do on all our projects is integrate our softwares and modeling to explore how different building configurations, orientations, and envelopes, materiality can improve the energy utilization or decrease it to save money. And so these are examples of some of the different types of modeling that we do.
Yeah, I mean, coming after the budget talk, it's important, you know, the way that we approach it is it possible to reduce your energy usage so you're reducing cost every year, and, you know, maybe it allows you to afford another teacher that perhaps you couldn't before. My daughter's still looking for a job.
I was plugging that, Shana.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, so anyhow, so again, these were explorations we did before we even had any direct conversations, but there's a lot of possibilities. Had a great meeting this morning, and you have some great folks kind of leading this initiative that are really going to bring innovative thinking and passion to this that we haven't seen in a long time. Yeah.
I know the state code used to, I assume it still had to be a ground floor this age.
Yes.
I know the topo lends itself maybe to some split level, but they're always on the ground.
That's correct. They have to have grade level access, yeah. And we want to you want to have that too, again, just from learning, the inside-outside connection for these young kids is.
As well as external doors, right?
Correct.
I recall.
That's correct.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we're able to work with DOT. Joe, maybe a question for you as far as the two egress entrances and exits.
Yeah, we have already located them.
We know one's on Steel Street, one's coming in off Steel.
It's coming off Steel, one of them.
Right.
The entrance is off. We're not allowed to go onto 160.
So we gotta figure that out.
So
We're gonna go out past the YMCA.
Oh, on the other side, yeah.
so what this shows on here with the,
That's
was an earlier version, but not what we're able to do based on DOT requirements. Okay. All right, I will
good.
put next to that. Questions, feedback, comments?
Excited to see it develop.
Yeah, and I keep thinking like other elementaries, but it's not another elementary. It is all little people, because some of our elementaries have got fifth graders in them, and this is all less than kindergarten, so.
Less than
very,
kindergarten.
very,
This is the size of 3.5 early childhood centers. Usually they get 2 to 250.
oh, so this is a big one.
So this is gonna be, that's why you see the pop.
Yeah, which makes sense then, so that it's not so overwhelming to
Correct.
those individuals.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's a lot of great opportunity here and great ideas this morning, and it's going to be a great place, and it's going to be very important for everybody in this Fort Mill community.
And again, I wish the Paradise reps were here to hear this, but I think there's also a plan for there to be certain portions of this facility that can be used for, I don't know if it's after school or community events or things like that that are part of, but separate from the classroom spaces and things like that. Yeah.
Yes.
That's correct. Still being defined, but yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. We're very glad to be working with your team on this. Thank you.
It's exciting.
Okay,
All right,
thanks.
where was I? I've lost my place.
No, I like that.
Sorry, I was flipping around. Okay, the next item is some update on the walkability study that was done. And my understanding, it was done specific to Fort Mill High School. I was thinking it was a broader walkability study within the community, but it was just Fort Mill High School.
That's right, just Fort Mill High School.
All right.
So, good evening. I'm a little offended everybody left before I got to talk, but that's okay.
Walkability.
I guess they saw me on the agenda twice and said, I'm getting out of here. But we're going to present the walkability assessment that we did with Fort Mill High School. This was actually coordinated by the Bike Ped Coalition, DHEC, and then Holspire, York County. Liz Duda, who I thought she was going to be here tonight, but she's not here, but she is the owner of this presentation. I am just presenting it, so I want to give her the credit where credit is due. So, got my clicker here.
And it's my understanding that it's also been presented at maybe TK City Council and RFATs and a couple other places, right?
I think City of TKK,
Oh,
yep, go back.
yeah, I see it now.
Yep. SIC at Fort Mill High School, Town of Fort Mill, York County, SCDOT, RFATs, and other stakeholders.
Okay.
All right, so the purpose of this was really threefold. It was one, to look for opportunities to make the roads safer for our students to be able to walk or bike or roll to school. Also to promote policies and practices in the environment to promote healthy, safe living for our students and community members. And then also just foster collaboration between different entities and different groups to take action and accountability. The background here, really, we got here because parents and teachers and school officials have asked community leaders and elected officials to help students walk, bike, and roll to school, to Fort Mill High School. So the Bike Ped Coalition, York County, Holspire, and then DHEC got together and had this walkability study as done in other communities like Clover and York and Rock Hill. It was also to look at the routes that are around Fort Mill where parents want their kids to be able to do this. Also where Fort Mill High School administration and the school community sees students walking to and from. And then also our track teams and our cross-country teams, they run around that area, around the area of Fort Mill High School. So making sure that we're providing a safe environment around the school as well. So if you look at the map of Fort Mill High School, you might not be able to see it here, but there's really 5 roads that kind of surround Fort Mill High School. They're over on the left side, 5 state roads. We split into 4 groups that day. It was on February 9th. It was cold. I was coming off a broken leg. It was my first week out of my boot, and I walked 2.5 miles, but I was all right. But we really split into 4 groups. The first group went out of the Harris Street exit of Fort Mill High School, which was the old Riverview entrance, and went right down to Sam Smith Road, which is now a cul-de-sac. It's really not a dead end, though, because there is more traffic there than they probably wanted to, because they go through Sutton Place to get to Sutton Road. But down Sam Smith Road to Wimbledon Woods, and then the second group went right and went all the way to Sutton Road. And then the third group went left and went to Highway 21 bypass, which is a very busy road, to the Forest Ridge Apartments, and then came back through Epps Road, which I'll show you a picture of in just a little bit, but it is where most of our students walk to Forest Ridge. They walk down Epps Road instead of down 21, thank God, because it's a safer route, but I'll show you some issues with that as well. And then the fourth group, which was the group that I was in, walked right out of Harris Street entrance to Munn Road and then all the way to 160, passing the bus entrance to Fort Mill High, the student entrance, St. Philip Neary, Peachtree Apartments, all of that. We had multiple participants in this. We were able to break into 4 groups. We had from all of these, you can see, I'm not going to read all these to you, but we had them from all different types of agencies, elected officials, law enforcement, community coalitions, and whatnot. So on to the recommendations. When we got done, we kind of met through email, and then they had some Zoom meetings that we were able to get on. But the first recommendation is ongoing, and that's just to continue the collaboration with these groups. This is a great way to get everybody together and look. I mean, this is just Fort Mill High School. Imagine what we could do if we do them for other schools. But really, it's a way for us to collaborate with DOT, collaborate with Town of Fort Mill, other entities to make sure that we're providing safe places for our students to walk. The second recommendation is immediate as well. This is really for us. Fort Mill School District setting a target number of students that regularly walk and roll to school. Right now, it's not a lot at Fort Mill High School. However, we do have approximately 50% of the 2,000 students live within 1 mile, and I think that's probably as a crow flies, but, and 10% live within a half a mile of the school. So that's a lot of students. That's, if you think about it, it's a lot of kids live within walking distance of the school. The problem is it's not completely safe to get there. And as Liz points out in her presentation, our parents and our grandparents walked uphill 3 miles in a snowstorm to school. So, yeah, sorry. Why can't we offer that same for our students as well? Recommendations 3 and 4 are really shorter term. This is really just looking at the signage and the street markings, which we've asked DOT to do in our resolution that we did, I think back in April. So this would be fixing the signage around Fort Mill High School. It's not consistent. There's like an in-school zone sign, but there's not a start school zone sign certain places. Looking at that, looking at the speed limit. Also if you look at these pictures, you look at the bridge that goes under I-77 on Harris Street. That bridge has no lighting, and it does get dark under there. And believe it or not, we've had Fort Mill High School teachers and staff have seen students walking to and from school in dark times. So that lighting under the bridge would help as well. Recommendation 5 is more medium term. Again, this is really looking at communicating with us and the DOT about the planning. If you look, the picture on the left, that's the Harris Street entrance exit for Fort Mill High School. Across that street is Epps Road, and that's where our students that live in Forest Ridge, that's where they walk across to Forest Ridge. The problem is that if you look at the pictures on the right, there's no walkway to get to the back of the neighborhood. They either have to climb a fence or climb through a fence to get to the Forest Ridge Apartments. So it's really working with those property owners and working with the manager of the Forest Ridge Apartments to see if we can somehow come up with some type of trail, because Epps Road is way safer than our students walking down 21, home from school or to school. Recommendation 6 is longer term. Asking South Carolina DOT again to look at the built environment, adding certain things like median pedestrian refuge islands, crosswalk paint, signage, visibility enhancements, looking at those things. Also looking at the sidewalks and seeing what we can do to make it a little more safer. If you look at that picture in the top right, that is a sidewalk that goes past where the football entrance is, almost to the old, I don't know if you know, there's another old entrance past it that we used to could go in and out of, but it's cleaning that sidewalk off and getting somebody to clean that off and cut the brush back so that.
Is that our sidewalk?
I don't know. Yeah.
Okay, because if it's ours, then we can do that. If
Yeah,
it's not,
right.
we can't.
Yeah, that's an easy fix.
Okay.
Recommendations 7 through 11, again, these are more long-term, and when you look at these are going to require a lot more planning, funding, time, effort, and work by multiple parties. That collaboration piece is going to be key. But really, the SCDOT with input from York County and the town of Fort Mill can explore adding bike lanes to connect to the existing York County bike routes. Also installing, for us to install, we would have to install a multi-use path sidewalk from Harris Street because that goes down our property. If you look at that top picture, that's going down Munn Road from Harris Street all the way to the entrance, the bus entrance for Fort Mill High School, and could connect. Hopefully, we're going to have to look at where it would connect all the way to 160. We have a sidewalk on the left side of the road, but we don't on the right side of the road. And they're having to cross Munn Road, which can get very busy. Yep.
Right.
Correct.
The places that we can do and the places that we can't.
And just to repeat what he said so everybody can hear is working with DOT because we have to look at the right of way. We have to work with DOT to get the sidewalks done. And then also looking at Sam Smith Road, the picture on the left is the pathway from Harris Street to Wimbledon Woods, which is east of Sam Smith Road, that's private property. So we would have to talk to them about somehow, or not we, but South Carolina DOT or somebody would have to talk to them about using that property. So really the key takeaways, again, is providing our students with a safe path to walk to and from school. This would hopefully cut down on traffic congestion if students were able to walk. Air quality could improve, as you know. It's a high-impact location, Fort Mill High School is. I mean, it is surrounded by Kingsley, Baxter Village, the new hospital, the Peach Stand on just one side, and then you have US 21 bypass on the other side. So we got Walter Elijah Park, which is not far. So having the ability for our students and our track teams, cross-country teams to be able to use sidewalks and get to and from school would be very, very, very beneficial for our students. And then, again, improving the built environment around Fort Mill High School, and then just really collaborating with with all of the different groups, the York County Council, or York County government, the town of Fort Mill, and SCDOT, trying to improve these areas, or Fort Mill High School areas, so that we can provide a safe path for kids.
I feel like Anthony, but I have 3 questions.
Okay. You got to have 4.
I have 3 questions. The situation with students that choose to walk, that can walk, and the impact of that on buses. So I'm assuming that for some of those, we don't offer bus transportation because of the proximity. For others, we might. But if a student says, I'm going to be a walker, do they still have the option to ride a bus when they choose to ride a bus, in which case we have to still have that
Right.
space available for them, and does it really alleviate buses?
At Fort Mill High School, we currently do not have any non-transport zones. So,
Okay.
and that is because even though
Right.
it's not safe, we've got to make sure it's safe. Like if you look at Dobie's Bridge or Ticket K Elementary, there's some safe routes to school. So we don't offer, if a student said they were a walker, obviously they would still need to, if they decided to change their mind and be a bus rider, we would still ask them to fill out a form to be, but register as a bus rider. But we would kind of have to save them a space
Yeah,
because
on any given
rainy
day,
day, thunderstorms.
they
Yep,
could choose to ride the bus, so they was, okay, that's what
correct.
I figured.
So they could choose to ride the bus, but it does, on a normal day, it would relieve bus congestion, like the crowdedness of a bus. I don't think we have any double routes at Fort Mill High School, Zach. But if we did, it could make it just where there's one route instead of two, so.
Second question, I'm just curious, SCDOT's receptiveness to some of these things, since most of them are kind of in their court.
Yeah, we have not heard an answer yet, but I will say that I had a DOT person in our group and he's the guy we've been working with as a school district, so he was in my group walking the.
Okay, which actually makes me think of the third and probably candidly the most important question is preemptive planning of this kind of stuff for the new schools. And I'm picturing Gold Hill Road, right? And I'm guessing there's no sidewalk and although we don't know, contrary to public opinion, we don't know yet who's going to attend those schools, but one would believe that maybe they're gonna be in walking distance. It's just, are they gonna be walking enabled? And I don't know if we've planned for any of that, or can we go ahead and be ahead of it?
Like at Mason Ford, the town went and built that road down on A.O. Jones. So it's always
Yeah.
constantly we're trying to figure out whose
Yeah.
responsibility. I mean, of course, we want it to be as safe as possible. On the other hand, as you know, we don't have unlimited funds.
Right. But to the extent we can plan for the questions to come, and kids are gonna wanna walk, and so we've gotta do as much as we can to have places for them to walk safely.
Yeah.
So,
And we don't put out where they can cross and all of that. We bring out
right.
lights or signage.
Right, and like I said, we haven't done the attendance lines yet, so I don't know if Beckett Farms is gonna go there or not gonna go there, but, you know, as soon as we know attendance lines, we can kind of prepare for where the routes might go. All right, those are my questions.
Do we have an idea how many students at Fort Mill High School actually do walk?
It's not a lot.
I mean, I can remember, and
20,
now this
30?
is, I was gonna say, if even that, I can remember 2017 and a little bit prior to that, if we had 20 kids that walked, it was a lot.
I think we have a few from Forest Ridge, and then, Walden Park, when you cross 21, they all they're not in the attendance zone.
Right.
So I think it's less than it was before Catawba Ridge opened.
Yeah, I mean, if I drive by, sometimes I would see a handful walking down towards Forest, whatever.
Right.
A few in towards Sutton Place, you know, on a pretty day, but not.
Yeah. So, and then I guess the Munn Road, very little housing there.
Houses there.
Yeah.
Right. That's why I was surprised by the walking all the way down Monroe to 160. I mean, I guess maybe to the Peachtree Apartments, to that first entrance there.
I think for Peachtree Apartments and for our teams that use that, a lot of our teams run down to Walter Elijah.
Isn't there some back cut through to
I'm assuming you could cut through Peachtree Apartments.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah.
There's probably a fence that you'd have to jump over.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
Yeah, okay.
all right.
Other questions?
Any other?
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Duda, for that update. Okay, now we've got a handful of action items. And the first one will be the topic we talked about a little bit ago, the 24-25 general fund budget. Anything else you want to talk to us about that you didn't say
No,
already?
I'm glad to answer any additional questions you may have, but the administration is asking for your approval of the 2024-2025 general fund operating budget of $234,226,316. So it's $234,226,316. And that would require approval of a tax millage increase of 21.9 mils to meet that balanced budget.
I have a clarifying question with regard to additional bus aid positions.
Okay?
I believe that to be where our special needs students are concerned, but is that more than just those buses?
I believe it is primarily those buses.
Okay.
So we do not have bus aids on traditional buses. It is strictly,
Great, no.
okay. Few and far between.
I was thinking potentially a very full capacity or something like that, but yes.
I had a couple questions. You mentioned it, but I'm gonna say it again anyway. We don't have the budget yet finalized from the state.
Correct.
We haven't had it finalized from the state for the last, I don't know how many years that we've had to do this, because it always seems to be later and later. So talk through the implications and process if, in fact, there is additional money, or if, in fact, heaven forbid, there is less money.
Correct. So if there would be additional funding, which would be wonderful, and we would welcome that, you have the ability, you can do an amendment to the budget later this summer, once we receive the final state funding allocation amounts. I could bring back to you what those were, I'll share those with you, and you would then have the ability to make any amendments to the budget plan that you wanted to, because the actual tax millage would not be submitted to York County until around September 1st, I think is when they asked for that and the documentation with that. So I would not send that information to them at this time yet. So you would have up until September 1st to make any changes as far as tax millage, based on if we see any additional state funding revenue that you would decide you wanted to reduce the millage. You could also decide, remember, we had a Category 4 priority list.
Yeah.
And you could also decide that you wanted to approve for us to move forward with adding the items in Category 4 to our budget plan. That would then change the bottom line. So what I would ask you then, we would reapprove the total general fund budget at that time.
Can you talk about what the Category 4 things were? Can you remind us what we ended up not being able to approve? Because
I don't have those in front of me. Can you pull those? Thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah, I didn't have
Dr.
it handy.
Bradley.
So I know it's a couple more
ESOL.
years.
I know it was the 2 additional ESOL teachers. It was additional athletic funding. It was 2 additional curriculum items for STEAM.
I know.
say no to that. Yes.
Are you looking at it in front of you,
Training.
Dr. Federley?
I had it.
Oh,
Just
okay.
closed it out
Okay.
right before we started this conversation. But I think Lippy named all of them.
Do it again one more time when we're not talking over each other.
2 additional ESOL teachers, a gifted and talented, I must
Yes.
use the wrong term, coordinator, director.
Correct.
somebody to
Elementary
streamline
coordinator for
Okay.
gifted and talented.
That professional development, STEAM training for our teachers and
Stipends.
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 Athletics.
And athletic stipends.
Oh, 504.
That's
Before
right, and a
cons-
504
facilitator.
coordinator.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Because our 504 IDEA special services population continues to grow exponentially more than anybody could have ever imagined.
Yes.
And we could hold that to use next year as well, right? If approved.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Again? What do you mean?
We could do that reach back thing if we did not
So
use it
if
on
we
this.
ended up not
Yes.
doing 21.9,
Correct.
then next
Yes.
year we would
The look
always
back.
have the look back
Look
opportunity.
back.
Correct.
Yep.
Correct.
I'm
But
with you.
in the event that the state comes up with more money than we believe we're going to get right now, the question would really be, would we want to go forward with priority 4 category
Or rollback millage.
or rollback millage?
Correct.
Well, let's just wait and see if it happens.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
well,
would be your
I'm not going to hold
options.
my breath because,
Exactly.
Yes.
you know.
And the
all
amount,
the
and whether,
Yes,
how many millage. and
exactly.
all- Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
If worst case, and they lowered our allocation amount, which I truly do not expect that at this time, because I think if anything, they'll put the additional 30 million back. But if they lowered our amount, we do have fund balance. That's why we have fund balance for situations like that. And we also have contingency funds that we could draw on.
Which is why, I'm not putting words in your mouth, but why I think you feel comfortable at this point that we should move forward and set a budget so that
Yes.
we can commit to our teachers what their new pay scales will be and all of those
Absolutely.
things, right?
And I think you've all seen too, in all the various e-clippings, things that have come out, most all the districts across the state have passed their budget last week or this week and are moving forward after having the same discussion that you're having as well.
Well, and the reiteration still once again comes back to that based on this funding formula that was put in place by the state 4 years ago that we're in the third year of, we have lost funding and we have gone from state funding 60% of our budget to now only funding 40% of our budget.
Correct. And the
90%
initial
of it.
promise, I will just add the initial promise of hold harmless funding,
Right.
which started out at a little over $7 million, has now gone away.
Right.
As
and
well.
we never were held harmless the way it was intended and the way Speaker Simmerl worked on that.
Correct.
Back in the day when we had those meetings and discussions. And 95% of our budget is staff, fringe, and keeping the lights on.
Correct.
Yeah, to your point, all of the other districts that I've been reading about in the clippings have been doing the same thing. And I know there has been some conversation in other districts, and I think it's I believe it is completely the ethical thing to do, to go ahead and pass a budget so that we can move forward knowing what people are going to be paid and what positions need to be staffed and so on and so forth.
I believe that's why, as you know, we receive these periodic allocation reports as the budget process goes through the House and goes through the Senate. We receive the reports of the allocations based on the formula at each step so that we're not caught by surprise at the end.
Right.
And I believe that's why they send that out to us throughout the process so that we can all start building our budgets to get to this point where we are tonight.
Any other questions?
Yes,
How many?
just a couple.
Oh, okay. Just checking.
So I thought our group did a wonderful job, the special service did a wonderful job presenting a couple weeks ago. It was educational for me, so
Yes.
I learned a lot during that presentation. So just want to get some clarity here. So regarding special services, and the question revolves around we have a huge investment that you're proposing for special services.
Yes.
So when we talk about the instructional coaching, can you or Dr. Wakes just kind of provide some framework for me again, at least, to make sure I understand kind of what is this going to mitigate?
Sure. And Lori, would you like to share anything on that as well? Sure. Go ahead.
Hi. So the instructional coaches have been selected to support our special education teachers, both resource inclusion and special setting teachers at the elementary level. So each instructional coach is assigned to 2 or 3 schools and will support those teachers in the classrooms and in instruction.
Okay, thank you. And then the other question I have 2 more. So the other one is more, so I've spent a lot of time here the last 6 months visiting our schools, and when I'm asked to join and come read or whatever, I may ask, can you take me to a special services class? So I've learned a lot. And so the question I have is, like, when it comes to like the instructional assistants, like there are many times I notice that we have some severe cases, we have the one-on-ones, those types of things. Like, I know there's not enough money in the world that we can have to help out with that, but we took all that into consideration. And you're comfortable with what you're requesting today?
Yes.
Yes.
So you mean with the number that they requested?
Yes.
Oh, well, they would like more.
Right.
More. But,
Okay.
yes.
So some of those are classroom assistants, but some are also one-on-one assistants assigned under individualized education plan.
Okay. Thank you. And then last question for you, Ms. Lotto. So you've been in the weeds, deep dives and all that regarding the budget. from a 30,000-foot view, how does Leanne Lord feel about this? Give us your
Yeah.
thoughts, your overall thoughts.
So yes, as you know, and just so everyone watching knows, I mean, the leadership team of this district, headed up by the superintendent, we meet with all the principals as we go through the process. We generally meet with them in groups. The elementaries come in together, the middle and the high. They share with us one-on-one their budget priorities and why they're asking us to include those items in our priorities. We also meet with the department heads and go through that same process. And then we have discussion about what really do we feel are the highest items needed for next year. And that's how I basically develop the groups of priorities for your review. You've seen the master summary spreadsheet of all the requested needs. So you've seen that there are many more needs that we just could not fund. But I feel like what we've presented to you is the prioritized list for next school year and to continue just the excellence that we've seen in this district. Also, while we're being competitive with salaries and doing everything we can for teacher retention going forward as well.
And to put it into perspective, I believe you said the total requests was something more like 20 million
Correct. It was over 20 million was the total request.
versus what we see here.
Correct.
1 million.
Correct.
And some of those in priority one, it's not even a matter that it's request, it's that we're required to do. So
Yes.
when the state says we're giving teachers a pay raise of X, even though they didn't put X into the budget, we still have to do that.
Correct.
Regardless.
Such as which we want to do for our teachers, such as the step increases for another year experience.
Right.
Is there a reason why we left $500,000 on the table?
Well,
Not funded a couple of those category 4 items?
we could go back, it just wasn't quite enough. We could go back and look at category 4 and further prioritize within category 4 what is the highest need there. I was really holding off until I see those final state numbers before we commit to anything else, especially before we commit to any other positions, adding any other recurring positions.
So we can always add the point.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Any other discussion?
You're the one that remembered the category 4 stuff.
I don't have a question. I don't know if I'm supposed to do this before a motion, or I'm just.
We could entertain a motion if we want, and then see if there's any further discussion.
I'm just saying, I am going to vote yes on this budget. And I am going to vote yes on this budget because education can be very lonely. And when you're in a classroom with all these other humans, you wouldn't think you would feel alone, but you can. I think the only people lonely are building level administrators, because they really are an island. And when I look at this budget, I see that we are trying to tell our students and our teachers, you are not alone. We see you, we value you, we want to meet your needs, we want to help, we want this to be better. We want you to have technology, because I know Mr. Spittle's got to get all his licenses and everything. I mean, we want you to have the stuff you need to be successful. But I think you should be proud of this budget. I am proud to vote yes for this budget, because I think it will impact people and they will feel just a hair less alone. And so that's why I'm going to vote yes.
Probably time for a motion, and then we can have any other discussion.
You're going to just sit there. Okay.
I'll make the motion if you want me to.
Yeah, please do.
Okay. Let me get the right number. I expected you to have it written down, Ms. Brandon. Let me get the
Sorry,
correct number.
I'm looking at my green folder. You want me to just?
I would like to make a motion that we accept the administration's recommendation to approve the 24 2024-2025 budget with a total revenue of $234,226,316.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the recommended budget for the 24-25 school year of $234,226,316. Is there any further discussion?
And that's a total of how many mills again? 21.9.
21.9.
Nope, it's 21.5.
Well, well, I have it in that other district level to be allocated.
So it's
21.9 mils.
Correct.
Okay.
Does that make sense? The
It does.
revenue includes the full amount.
Okay.
And the 104,000 is on the expenditure side is in the other district level number
Okay.
right now.
All right, so at 21.9 mils.
Yes.
Is there any further conversation or discussion? We have a motion and a second, yes. All those in favor signify by, at this time, let's raise our hand, because I know there was some confusion last time. All those in favor signify by saying aye, raising your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion carries, and we have a budget.
Thank you so much
until
for your
we
support
learn
on that.
if there's any more money to come out. But don't leave, because you have the next action item as well.
Yes, so at the last meeting, I presented for your consideration a year-end transfer. This is for funds that have come in over our budget plan for the year ended June 30th, 2024. And just to recap, we would, the total transfer request is $2,172,620. We would, off the top, put $1 million of that into the contingency fund, because we are going to be budget challenged in future years with opening back-to-back schools with elementary 12 and middle school 7 coming on. The remaining items would be for the media center collections, as we generally do with this year-end funding at $8 per student. That's $148,280. $250,000 for the small capital purchases for our schools. Actually, Kelly Keniston told me today they're waiting to see if you approve this. They are going to be probably beating her door down tomorrow to get some ordering going for the schools. $365,800 for school furniture requests. That covers, I believe I said 15, 16 of our schools had furniture requests. 120,000 of that would go toward technology for the district data center UPS backup replacement. That's every 10 to 15 year expenditure, so it is certainly non-recurring. $21,750 for additional school radios. $10,000 for new classroom setups for some of our new teachers. The middle school athletics 2024-2025 equipment replacement request is $60,000. That would cover all 6 middle school athletic programs. And then additional band instruments for Catawba Ridge High School of $110,270. Last year, you approved band instruments for Fort Mill High and Nation Ford. So this would be for Catawba Ridge. And then the last 3 items were curriculum requests that were in their general fund budget request. 2 of these are on Category 4, but since we, at this point in time, cannot fund Category 4, they are on this list. $50,000 for teacher professional development, $25,000 for STEAM funding, and then additional $11,520 for the STARTS program for middle school that we do with Winthrop, where we send our students to Winthrop to participate in that program. So that, once again, is a total of $2,172,620. You heard me report earlier, I believe property taxes are going to come in a little more. I like to wait until we get the final tax year-end reconciliation from York County and then work through some of our audit work. But I would expect I may could come to you in August with a request for just a little additional more that I would probably at this time say let's put in contingency. But we'll see if anything else comes up over the summer. But I think outside of that, with these items, we have covered the requests that did not make the recurring budget. approval.
So let's start this time with a motion.
I'd
Do
like
it
to
the
make
right
a
way.
motion that we accept the recommendation of the administration to transfer $2,172,620 to contingency fund.
Second.
Well, not all to
I would say
contingency.
not all to contingency, however you want to do it.
Well, and
For
so
Just send the
items.
money.
I think we have a motion and a second to do a total transfer of.
$2,172,000.
No, $5,267,601.
Yes.
Of which $3,094,000 is going to the.
No,
General
because
fund.
$3,094,000 needs to stay in the general fund.
Right.
To meet our fund balance requirement reserve.
Right, okay.
So
It's not
you're-
a transfer, it
Correct.
is, yeah, it's part of the overage, but it has to stay there.
Correct.
Fair.
Whereas we are transferring $2,172,620.
Correct.
The yellow.
The auditors are very picky about that.
Yes,
Thank you.
I misspoke. Okay.
Yes.
So we do have a motion and a second to do a transfer of $2,172,620
Yes.
to cover the various items, including some to the contingency fund.
Correct.
Now, any further discussion?
Ms. Lordo, can you and/or Mr. Spittle give us a Cliff Notes version of the $8 per student district-wide ebook hardbound book so that we have clarity with regard to that and how we are graded, I guess, as a district based on those materials?
The requirements, can you help me? Sure.
So the state has some target criteria for school libraries, and we have calculated it takes about $13 per student per year to maintain our libraries at the minimum level. And so you'll have to help me with this part.
Right, out of the $110 per student that the schools receive for their school budget, they allocate $5
towards books
for the books.
So when
other $8.
Yeah, so when we can, we like to contribute $8 additional each year to that, so that we can meet that $13 target number.
And that's a target that the State Board of Ed puts in place and basically grades us against, but is again one of those unfunded mandates.
Yeah, I don't. The state doesn't have a target dollar amount, but we have found that's what it takes for our district to maintain.
To maintain based on our enrollment.
Yes.
Okay.
I was supposed to say,
And
based
it's-
on the growth.
Right, and part of it is books per student, and then copyright age, and
right.
So as we grow, we do have to add to the
Add
collections
more books.
to
It's
maintain.
about educational quality.
Yeah.
Right.
Did that help?
Yes, thank you.
Other questions? I think one thing I would just point out, right now, this shows $1 million going into the contingency fund, which I think is very important because in the budget we just approved, we were pulling 3.3 out just for next year alone. So this will lessen that bite.
Yes.
Okay. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye and raising your right hand.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, that
Thank you
motion
very
also
much.
carries. We look forward to hearing if anything changes in the numbers, and we get to do this again later on.
Absolutely. We will let you know as soon as we hear anything.
I hope we hear good news. I would love to talk about it again.
I know, right?
Our next action item is from last meeting 2 weeks ago, approval of board policy IKA grading and assessments.
Yes, good evening. So Mr. Ollinger was up here last meeting and talked to you about the changes of the grading system, and it's a one-word change to the policy, moving the statewide uniform grading scale starting at grade 3 instead of grade 2. So it's just that one change. Also on the administrative rule, we noticed that we had the incorrect grade bands, the uniform grading scale, and that's been in place since 2016. That's statewide. That's nothing that we have any control over. We just missed it in the administrative rule, so we updated that. Also, where you see the A is 90 to 100, B is 80 to 89, and that's been in place since 2016 across the state. So if there is no other questions, that's that's all that I have.
And by definition and by policy, the board does not approve administrative rules.
Correct.
Policies.
Yes.
So I believe we're entertaining a motion to approve policy IKA.
Correct. Yes, that's what we're asking for approval for.
I would like to make a motion to approve the administration's recommendation to update policy IKA grading assessment systems.
Second.
Motion a second to update policy IKA as recommended, IKA grading and assessment systems. Any discussion?
How does this relate to the emails that we've received from some concerned teachers with regard to changes that were communicated to them? Is that a part of this?
No, those are two separate issues. We're working on some common grading practices, but those fall outside of the policy on the grading system.
And that's not something that the board is involved in?
Correct. Typically not, yes.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right.
Thank you.
That motion passes. And then we have the approval of instructional, they're kind of out of order. We're going to go to names and mascots next for elementary 12 and middle school 7.
All right. Well, it's again an exciting time to get to name the schools, elementary 12 and middle school 7, and mascot and colors. I do want to make note that when I presented 2 weeks ago, we did talk about the Early Childhood Center. We are going to hold off on that and get some more input from the community. Obviously, you heard the passion from these community members tonight, and I thought it was great that they came up here and spoke. I will say that we've spoken to them over the last 2 weeks privately, and we want to make the right decision for the community. So we'll go back to and speaking with community members to make sure we present the right name to you guys at our next meeting, hopefully, if not somewhere down the road here in the next few months. So we're not in a hurry for that one. We have, I think it's 27, is that right, is when it's opening? So, yeah, so got a little time there. But let's see. The first one is Flint Hill Middle School. This is middle school number 7. As just a reminder, we used a little different of a process this time. We went out and we took a survey of our whole school community and got input from them. Flint Hill overwhelmingly was the name for both the middle school and the elementary school. We also sent out some historical information from the Fort Mill History Museum. So again, I want to thank them, Carol Case. I want to thank them. I also want to thank Jenny Overman and Joe Berg for their input with that as well. So we were able to send out that historical information with the survey, and it was really awesome to get the feedback from our community. So Flint Hill Middle School and the Red Foxes would be the mascot for Flint Hill Middle School. Again, that logo is not for use. That is just a logo that will change, that Joe Burke will work with the architect and builder, and we'll get the right logo for the school down the road somewhere. So, but the colors are a true red and black and white. So kind of matches Nation Ford High School, which hopefully, maybe that school, maybe not, but
Don't know. Maybe they'll go to.
possibly they will feed into Nation Ford High School at some point. So that is middle school number 7. And then we have elementary school number 12. This is Flint Hill Elementary School. Again, this is the Cubs. So the Cubs are a name for a young red fox. So we thought that was neat to have it. Again, we have 2 joint campuses that do not share common mascots, but we have 2 that do. So we figured Cubs was an awesome choice, a neat choice for our students at elementary school to number 12. So that would be Flint Hill Elementary School. And that is the colors for that school are warm red, silver, and a bright white. So we changed the colors just a little bit from the middle school, made it a little more warmer for the young guys and gals.
Young Cubs.
Yep.
For the Cubs,
The Cubs.
right?
So do we have to make a motion to table
We can. I mean, I think
as a point, since it's an action item?
since it was an action item listed, it's probably a clarification to do that. So let's start with the approval, if we can get a recommendation for the 2 that have been recommended.
Okay, I'd like to make a recommendation I'd like to make a motion that we accept the administration's recommendation for The name and mascots for elementary number 12 and middle school number 7.
As Flint Hill, middle school and
As
Flint
presented.
Hill.
As presented by.
As presented. All right, second.
Motion and a second to adopt the names and mascots of elementary 12 and middle school 7 as presented. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries.
I'd like to make a motion that we table discussion and action for the naming of the Early Childhood Center.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to table tonight's decision on the Early Childhood Center. I think we heard, since our last meeting, some new information that needs to be considered. And so we'll bring that back at a future time. Is there any other discussion?
Nope.
All right, all those in favor of tabling that for a future meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. And then our last action item, back to instruction, is the approval of some instructional materials that we also discussed a couple weeks ago.
All right. Good evening. Should be very easy. I want to help you spend other people's money on this. The state pays for textbooks, so this shouldn't affect us at all on that. We have a couple of new, or a few new science textbooks that are up for adoption. I'll try and breeze through the parts that are the greatest hits of what you hear often, but the State Department of Ed creates a priority list of the texts that they want to fund, but that list is very long and the funding is actually shorter. So as they get new pockets of funding, that's why I continue to come back to you in a rolling manner to say, oops, they found more money, this time for science. So they've already done this part where they've solicited input from the public, so the public has had a chance to vet these texts and provide the state with their feedback. The state has provided official vetting, and they have provided us an adoptable list. So these things are beyond our control. We are selecting from a already curated list from the state. So initially, chemistry and physics materials were not on the funded list, and then on May 14th, we got a happy email saying, we've got it, but you got to act quick if you want to be ready to get these things ordered so we can hit the ground running in August, which is why I'm bringing it to you on our last before the big summer break. We followed our standard protocol of looking at things like, does it align to the profile of a South Carolina graduate? Does it meet with our state standards? And does it have just the general readability and appeal that our teachers want for our students? We apply a similar rubric in all cases, and the committees did do this. Typically, we like to have a caravan, but with this really quick rollout, they didn't have a physical caravan, so there was an online sharing of resources. Our teachers did have voice in the matter. They came together with representatives from each of the high schools, met with Greg Brobst, our K-12 science coordinator, to provide their input. They talked about likes, dislikes, and selected texts based off of that. So they selected what they felt was the best resource to address our state standards, and they're out in the hallway where public participation sign-in is for perusal, but we have, I believe, 4 Savas texts and 1 Cengage for AP Chemistry. So are there any questions about that? All right.
I would entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the recommendation of the administration for the approval of 5 new textbooks. That is Savas Experience Chemistry for Chemistry 1, Savas Experience Physics for Physics 1, Savas Introductory Chemistry for Chemistry 2, Cengage Chemistry AP Edition for AP Chemistry, and Savas College Physics Explore and Explain for AP Physics 1.
Second.
Motion is second to adopt the 5 selected textbooks as presented. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? We have new textbooks.
Thank you very much.
And that brings us to our last open session item, which is an update from our beloved superintendent.
Love it. Okay, I like it. I don't know who falls in that line. I thought with the board's permission, I would extend my report tonight to about 45 minutes. Y'all okay with that?
Sure.
Sure.
No problem.
When Don and I put the calendar of events together, it's always a week ahead, and I'll go ahead and read what we have, and then I'll check with my real calendar, and y'all can be looking for other dates that we may have missed. Of course, tonight's meeting and approval of the budget. Then the 16th and the 19th, we have the Administrative In-Service or Innovative Ideas Institute in Myrtle Beach. A lot of our staff attends, a large number of administrators. Then we get into the July, as you know, we're on the 4-day week now. We get into the July 4th and 5th holiday, which I think is a Thursday, Friday this year, if my memory works correct. Then we come back, it's a short summer. We come back for our administrative in-service on the 30th at the Dairy Barn. Then the teachers return on the 1st, on August 1. On August 2, we have the Engage to Learn Professional Development Center where we name the Teachers and Support Staff of the Employees of the Year Award. And we're doing that at Catawba Ridge once again, right, Michael? And so it ought to be a lot of fun. School board meeting on the 6th. And I hadn't really set the calendar yet for the meetings, but these two made sense for August. We need to get the other dates out, and we're working on that too. But you have a meeting on the 6th and on the 20th, which that seems to work pretty well. We'll have some good numbers by the 20th, and then we'll have a week off before the meeting on Labor Day, Tuesday. Well, we'll have to look at when we meet on that one. The school board's law conference, the 10th through the 11th. And what did I leave out? The students return. Oh, the students' first day. Wow, how could I leave that out? Return for the first day on Thursday, the 8th. So we have a 2-day week, which will be, is this the first year we've done that? We used to.
In a while.
We've done it before.
First in a while.
Right.
Right.
Which will be interesting.
We'll ease in.
Any other dates that I may have left out?
Have I already missed it? Has the Tech Dowling Golf Tournament already occurred? Did I miss that?
27th.
I was thinking it was still coming up at the end of June, so that's on the 27th.
I meant to
Okay.
say that. That's my bad.
And then the only other thing I would add is, if between now and August 6th, there is monumental movement on the budget, on some of the other legislative actions
some
with
unforeseen-
policies or things like that, then we could potentially reconvene a board meeting sometime in June or more than likely July.
We could have a
by the
special
time.
call
Yeah.
really anytime.
Right. So I think this year may be one of those years that's more likely than not. But not scheduled at this point because we don't know.
Any other dates?
Anything else?
That I failed to mention. Okay, going on to enrollment update, we grew by 1. Looks kind of odd. 18,414 to 18,415, but we're still tracking, when you add the grads up, I think we're pretty much on line with where we thought we would be.
I wasn't sure who ended up owing who the quarter, about 18.5.
You've been getting me lately,
Well,
so.
that was Anthony, that
Oh,
wasn't
me
me.
and
So y'all had an
Anthony, yeah.
18.5 discussion. I wasn't sure if you ended up owing the quarter or not.
Well, but I think when you
don't mind
add
owning it.
in the 70, 80, whatever it is,
Yeah, see, I
90
don't know the-
grads
Yeah.
Yeah,
from
Is
January.
it 85 or more? That's the question.
I don't think it was 85 or more.
I
Did we
think
have-
you owe him a
How many
quarter.
was it
Yeah,
that
I think it was
graduated
like
mid-year? About
79.
70 something?
I think you owe him a quarter for those
I
7
think I
additional.
lost. I'll buy you a Coke, Anthony.
All right.
But I was close.
Very, very close.
Very
Like
close.
Leanne does, when on a $1 million budget, she gets it
That's
pretty,
right.
pretty good.
Right?
In the grand scheme of things, it's, yeah. All right.
All right, and then, let's see, anything else on enrollment update? No, you can see by school.
Yep.
And then we go to the attendance update, and it looks like, I'll skip teacher pupil ratios, I don't believe y'all gonna add a teacher
Doesn't
now.
matter at this point.
Looks like we have some similar, the similar cast of winners at the high school level. It's Nation Forward with 95.18. At the middle school level, Fort Mill Middle, 93.99. And then the district winner, and then pretty consistent throughout the year, and this month's winner, Springfield Elementary, 96.429. So
We've
that's
got a
teacher
healthy
attendance.
bunch
Teacher
there.
attendance.
Yeah, they do.
Very healthy bunch. Yep.
Okay, I'll defer my 45 minutes to later.
Anything else for the good of the group or the online audience before we officially put a wrap on this school year and move into summer break?
Well, now that you've asked, I think, just right off the top of my head, I think we've had a highly successful year. We're already working on the report card narrative that goes out to all the parents, talks about our accomplishments, so I won't steal the thunder. But I think by any measure, we academically, athletically, I think we met the needs of what our public expect, or at least in my opinion. So I'm very proud of our staff, and I think the challenges going forward is going to be state funding. with the charter schools being funded like they are, not saying that's bad or good, but it impacts us at the public, at the regular ed, gen ed schools. So that'll be, I'm thinking 5 years down the road, we're really gonna have some challenges, I believe, in that area, particularly if the legislature continues to operate in the way they're operating. And I know big picture wise, it may make sense to operate on some of these issues like we do, such as open enrollment challenges and proposals. When you get right down to it, with districts that are growing, it's just a different ballgame. Not many of the solutions impact us favorably. And and we're gonna always be strong because we've got good people and we've got good demographics. But the money part's gonna challenge us going forward, in regards to total dollar spend, I think. But I hate to leave on a negative.
Well, so I was gonna end it on a positive then,
Good.
because we had, an amazing graduation day on Saturday. And hearing you were saying, I think we met the mark and had a successful year. The dollars provided to that senior class graduating of, 10, 20 million per school, for a graduating class of about 1,200 total, was phenomenal. And I think scholarships, if I didn't say that.
Didn't get that word
I didn't
out.
say that. Okay, sorry. Yeah, each school had an amazing number of dollars that are provided to those graduating seniors. And I think that is kind of the final piece of evidence in the student's career that shows, that the college is out there very happy with the work that our district is doing in producing some really quality students out to their next phase of life.
And
So,
that's money in parents' pocket.
absolutely it
That's
is.
what that is, or money not out of the pocket, but I think.
Or the
that-
student's pocket, right? In not having to take out the student loan as well. So I think it's very impressive.
I think the product we have yielded to the public continues to make property values go up. People are still moving here. I mean, the proof's in the pudding. You can talk about bad or good, but somebody's coming here because of the schools, obviously. So I think that speaks for itself.
So to all of our teachers and faculty and staff, and anybody watching, congratulations on another year well done. And with that, we are in need of an executive session to discuss personnel recommendations. And so we will adjourn here
Motion
and
to
move
go into
into
executive session.
executive session.